Today we're going to go ahead and finish the assembly cut that I put into the VisCom folder. So you're going to find all the files in there if you haven't looked for them already. It's going to go ahead and be in day 1 here. So all of this stuff is pretty much the same. You're going to find all the files in VisCom, Media, Kavara, Assignments, Effect and Keyframes, ACA Session 2, Premiere Course files. So everything's going to be there, and I also want you to watch the video because this is going to be your guide in order to, this is how I want you to put it together. Now in the video there's a few things that you don't know how to do yet, and that's what I'm going to go ahead and teach you today. I'm going to teach you some of these important things that are going to be on the ACA tests, and they're really important things that you should know about Premiere. Let's go ahead and take a look here. So I'm going to go ahead and zoom in. First thing here in day 2. We're going to be learning some of the effects and effect controls. We're going to watch the video below, and again I'm going to instruct you here on how to find and use some of those effects and effects controls. So here's some of the following things we're going to learn today. Number 1, using a specific color when using a green screen. Now green screen is not the only thing you can use. You can use a green screen, a blue screen. Back when they were doing Mary Poppins, they would use a yellow screen. So it doesn't really matter what you use. You can always key that out. I mean, what's really important though is that you don't wear the same color of the background that you're using. So obviously if you're going to be wearing green, you don't want to wear you don't want to use a green screen. You're going to want to use a blue screen or something else like that. So, but really the most popular one's going to be a green screen followed by a blue screen. The other things we're going to do is working with video layers and transparency, because once you use your green screen, you're going to have to figure out your laying and your stacking order. So whatever your most top video is going to see is the video you're going to see most, and then you're going to layer that underneath. Scale size and adjusting position on a video, and then also using keyframes to begin and end movement for an effect. Now keyframing is something that's used in animation. And essentially what we're going to be doing is we're going to be animating our scene. So if we need something to move, something to grow, get bigger, like a little TV screen behind them, we're going to have to do that using keyframing. So let's go ahead and start. First thing we're going to do is I'd like you guys to watch the video, and we're going to see some of the effects that we're going to need. First of all, I notice the background. I believe on the video that we've given you, the background is green. On here, the video is clouds. Number 2, you're going to see something we call a lower third, and that's going to be a title that's going to fly in. And then number 3, you're going to see a TV screen, or you're going to see a picture come up behind him, and that's something that we can also do. You can use a video or a photo or anything, as long as it's within your stacking order, and then we can size it any way that we want. Let's go ahead and take a look at the video. So first thing you see is the fly-in. That's the lower third. You see the mother there. The mother comes in the background. Okay. The other thing that I want to teach you is titles and the ACA Session 2, but titles are something that we've already learned before, so I don't think I'm going to go over that too much. Let's go ahead and back off now, and let's get into Premiere. Okay, so in Premiere, I've already loaded everything up. I do have a timeline, but the first thing I want to do is I'm going to go ahead and delete this timeline here, because we're going to go ahead and make our own. Now, one thing I want you to notice about this video is it gives us thumbnails to begin, and I like using thumbnails when I'm looking through my footage, but something else that's going to be very helpful here. And there's 2 views that you can actually look at your videos. There's list view and there's icon view. Icon view is what we're using now, and icon view shows you icons or the thumbnails that you guys see here, and that's really helpful to see your videos. But list view is really good because, okay, number 1, it doesn't show you your video. It shows you a few important things, like I can see that this has both video and audio. This is a video only, again, video and audio, and then we can kind of see down. It also tells you what the title of your film is. It tells you what kind of file it is here and the file name. This is the most important thing that we're going to be looking for right now. It's your frame rate. Now remember, film runs at 24 frames per second, and that's to get that film look. Video, on the other hand, runs at 29.97 frames per second, and that gives you a smoother look, but it's a less kind of filmic look. So let's say you're shooting one day, your camera's at 24 frames per second. Obviously it says 23.98, but we round it to 24. Same thing here, 29.97, we call it 30 frames per second. And then the next day you check out the camera, you don't even realize it, you shoot your entire scene and it's now 29.97. You're going to have an issue here. You have one that's running one way and you have one that's running another way. They're going to look different. So this one's going to look more like film. This one's going to look more like a sitcom on TV. And those aren't going to really mesh very well. So one way that we can fix that is you really have to think about what kind of film you want. If you want a filmic look, you need to make sure that you choose any of these film clips that are running at 23.98 frames per second. 24 frames per second is going to give you a film look. Okay, so that's not the only thing you want to look at. As we scroll through, we see a few things here. We see video info, making sure that your resolutions are all the same. And as I scroll down, this is good. 1920 by 1080. This is actually HD. This is high HD. If you're going to see something like 720, if you see 720 here as the number, that's a lower HD. It's still going to look really good on an HD TV, but it's just not as good as 1080 or 1080p is what we call this here. So this is perfect. So that's another thing you need to consider. When you drag this over, you're going to make a timeline that has whatever your video info here, whatever your resolution is. And then over here, it's also going to carry the frame rate as well. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and choose any one of these. It doesn't really matter because they all are 24 frames. I'm going to make sure I grab a 24 frames per second footage, bring it in, and what Premiere just did is it analyzed my film and it actually brought those settings in. So the first thing I do is I delete this out of my timeline. It's called truck. I don't want to confuse myself as I'm editing. I can tell that this is different. This is a timeline, and instead of truck, I'm going to call it timeline. It's going to really help. Now what you can do too is you can call it main timeline if you're using multiple. You can call it timeline 1. It doesn't really matter. It's completely up to you, and we can always change it later. But just notice timeline, it's changed there. Okay, that's step 1. Okay, so I have my footage. I'm running a 24 frames per second. My footage 24 frames per second, and my resolution, which is the size, is 1080p. Perfect. Okay, now I can go ahead and move to the next step. The next step is bringing my first footage in, and we're going to go ahead and use the green screen. And notice that I can't see it here, so this is good for looking at my metadata. But now I'm going to switch over to icon view, which lists my thumbnails. Scroll down. Let's go and look for this green screen here. There it is. I'm going to bring this in. Okay, this is really important. It says this clip does not match the sequence settings, and it's asking me, do I want to change the sequence to match the clip settings? Now let's take a look here really quick. I'm going to cancel this out. I'm going to hit escape, cancels it out, and let's bring that out. I don't want that yet. Okay, so what I want to do now is I'm going to go ahead and hit my list view, and let's go ahead and take a look. I'm looking for that video here. What was that video called? It was called, there it is, Director Intro MP4. And my guess is Director Intro MP4 is going to be different than the rest, and I look over and it is. It is 29.97. So what happens is this footage, and I'd like you guys to check this out on your own, is I'd like you to check the footage against the rest of it. This footage here, 29.97, if I double click it here and I play it, it plays a little smooth and actually looks a little strange. Not exactly what I'm looking for here. Go to full resolution here. And it's going to look a little bit different than if I'm running something at 24. Anything at 24 frames per second, again, it's going to have a little bit more of a filmic look to it, okay? Just a little bit of a slower frame rate. So in that case, let's go back here. Let's bring that in. And let's answer that question now. What do I want to do? If I bring this in, and it's asking me, it doesn't match the sequence settings. Remember, my sequence settings, this is my sequence, is 23.98. Do I want to change it to match the settings of this? No. I want to make sure I keep my existing settings. Do not change your sequence settings. I like my sequence. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to keep the existing settings. Okay. Now what Premiere is doing here is it's trying its best to change this footage into a 24 frames per second clip. Let's go take a look. It's something that's very subtle, but it actually is trying to work. So it actually looks a lot better. Okay, so now I have this in. What do I do with the green screen? How do I take this out? Now I did tell you that this is going to be an effect. First thing I do is I look for my effects, which are right here. So I'm going to zoom in a little bit so we can take a look at our effects panel. Okay, my effects panel is here. And so you want to think, is it a preset, Lumetri preset, audio transition, video effect, or video transition? Obviously it's going to be a video effect. And as we look down, remember I said this a little bit before, we're talking about color keying here. We're keying a specific color. And to give you the definition of keying here, keying means we're going to basically focus on one specific color, and we're telling Photoshop to make that invisible or transparent. Okay, so let's take a look at keying and see what comes up. Lots of different types of keying, but there's one keying that we're going to be using here, and it's the one that's the most powerful, and it's the Ultra key. So Ultra key is down here at the bottom, and it's a little plug. I'm going to go ahead and zoom back out, and I'm going to click on the Ultra key here. And I'm going to drag it over. One thing that you should know though is that in your search tab you can always search for anything that you need. So if I know I'm going to use Ultra key or a key, I can either type key, which is going to bring up a number of keys, or I can type in Ultra. And knowing that Ultra is going to bring up the exact key that I want. Also know that if I leave this in here and later on I look for a transition or something else, nothing's going to show up because it still thinks I want Ultra. Always remember to X this out when you finish. All right, let's plug in my Ultra key. So it's a plug. I just grab, I hold, I drag, and I drop it onto my clip. And there we go. Now, it looks like nothing happened, but actually something did happen. And where it is, and this is a new place, something happened up here in Effect Controls. Now, our source monitor here, we always use for previewing. Now, and also we use it for the audio clip mixer. You can look at metadata, which is all the behind the scenes stuff. Lumetri scopes, which is way advanced, something that we're not really getting into, but effect controls is something that we definitely want. And effect controls is something I use quite a bit when I'm working in Premiere. So effect controls does what it sounds like. It controls your effects. So let's take a look at what happened here. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to Command Z, which took the Ultra key off, and what's going to happen is once I drag this onto my clip, making sure that my clip is selected, notice how once I select my clip up here, these settings were in effect. So I'm going to grab my Ultra key, drag it over, drop it down, and you look here, Ultra key just appeared. So I'm going to Command Z so you can see it again. Command Z, it's gone. I grab my Ultra key, I drag it on, I drop it, and there it is. My Ultra key appeared here. So now my effect control has the Ultra key option. And it has other options too that we're going to be talking about, but really this is the one I want to focus on right now. And this is a really simple, straightforward option here. The first thing I want to do now is I want to key a specific color on the background. In order to do that, I grab the eyedropper, go over, and now I want to select this green color here. Now this green is a little bit, has a few different shades here. And what you want to do is you want to do your best to find something in between. If you grab a key here, it's not really going to grab some of this darkness here. And if I grab this dark part here, it's probably not going to grab some of this. You want to grab something that's quite in the middle. Let's go and grab something like right here. And that did a pretty good job. So being in the middle, you can see that some of the dark parts and some of the lighter parts didn't quite go away, but I know I can do that in some of these other options. So we have matte generation, we have matte cleanup. We're going to go ahead and go through a few of these in order to try to eliminate some of these, some of the screen that's still kind of spilling on screen. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go to shadows, and by doing shadows should eliminate these. So shadows are here. Just going to go ahead and grab and drag straight across. You notice if I make it bigger, the shadows appear. Make it smaller, the shadows go away. But what happens if I go too much? Notice some of the darker areas in my screen, noticeably here, start going away too. So shadows may not be the way I want to go, but that's okay. I've got quite a few others that I want to try out. Let's go ahead, and if I do highlights, the same thing happens. I can eliminate my highlights just by dragging down, but if you notice, that's about it. So highlights, I go all the way down, but I still have some left. So let's try tolerance. Tolerance is actually one of the ones that sometimes will work really well for me. If I bring the tolerance all the way up, some of the shadows went down. It's still not completely gone, but it looks like pedestal is also helping me eliminate some of these. So maybe a little bit of pedestal, and now I can go ahead and try some of these other ones here. Transparency, nope. Again, highlights are all the way. Lifting shadows brings that back. Now this is now the problem that we're having here is we have two problems. Inconsistent lighting, which I believe they did on purpose to show you it's really difficult to get rid of a bad green screen. And then the other thing is maybe I wanted to grab a different shade of that green. So instead of grabbing something over here, I possibly should have grabbed something over here, which would have got more of this, but that's okay. Now we can always kind of go through and we can find some other ones. You can see that choke, what it does is it shrinks or expands the edges of the person. Soften will feather the edges, so it'll kind of, what it does is it softens the edges. So there's quite a bit that you can do. I want you to go ahead and play around with this, play around with the eyedropper to see if you can get something better. I'm going to go ahead and leave it the way it is for now. Second thing I need to do is I need to bring in something into my background here. So let's go back to my, let's see here, my bin, and I'm looking for my clouds. Double click, see if that's what I need. Yep, I got moving clouds. Okay, so what I need to do is drag this in now. So I have my clouds here, but if you notice, number one, they're too short. That's okay, I'm just going to copy it over. But number two, my clouds are on top. I can't see anything. It's really simple. All you have to do is reverse your stacking order. Grab this, pull that up. Grab this, pull this down. Make sure my clouds are in my first layer. Put my director in my second layer. If we take a look here now, perfect.